The second offer, I talk about all the negative things in the area. Did you know there's boarded up houses? Did you know there's new construction? Did you know that there's a lot of crime? Here's some police reports. I send in a bunch of negative stuff to make the bank question if they can sell the house as quickly as they think that they can.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. Hello and welcome to episode 259. During the Great Recession, there was a lot of opportunity for those who knew how to invest in short sales and foreclosure properties. As the economy improved over the past 10 to 12 years, these strategies became quite rare for various reasons. But now, with coronavirus's impact on our economy, is this cycle starting up again? My guest today not only has an answer to that question, she is actively investing in and teaching others to invest in pre-foreclosure and short sales. Dwan Bent-Twyford has been on numerous TV shows. She's written 4 bestsellers, runs her own blog and YouTube channel, and her mission is to teach people how to build a business that they can pass down to their grandchildren, just like she's doing. Dwan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian. Nice to be on here with you today.
I know you have a really interesting backstory. Can you fill us in on how you got started investing in real estate?
Oh, my goodness. I've been investing for almost 30 years. It's really hard to believe that much time has passed me by. But the way I actually started, it's funny because the way I started in real estate investing, I don't think is like a lot of your listeners, because the people that are on here, they're here because they actually do want to learn about real estate investing, and they're searching. What happened with me is I had been fired from, I had been fired from a lot of jobs. I actually got fired from Denny's. Denny's. And I worked third shift. It's like 10 at night to 6 in the morning. Who gets fired from Denny's?
What do you have to do to get fired from Denny's?
I just remember walking out, looking back at that big old yellow sign and thinking, who gets fired at 3:45 in the morning from Denny's? But apparently, I heard words like insubordinate, I talked back too much. Anyway, I was fired. There's my daughter. I was fired from a few places. So long and short, now I'm married. I have a baby. She's 8 months old. And I sort of have this, I'm going to stay home and raise kids sort of vision. And as fate would have it, my husband and I separated when my daughter there that just strolled by was only 8 months old. So at that time, I have no formal education, nothing past high school. I really don't have any way to make money. I haven't been working. I've been fired from a lot of jobs, and now I have this baby. Say hi, Ayla. Hi.
Hello. That's your daughter who was 8 months old at the time.
That is, yeah. So anyway, so now she's an 8-month-old baby. My husband is gone, and I'm really truly on my own. So I'm thinking, okay, so what do I do next? And for me, I was not looking for really anything specific. The only criteria for me was I wanted to find something that I could do for myself from home and raise my daughter myself and not have to put her off into the daycare system. So I literally, and this is like in the very early 90s, like she was born in 88. So I'm talking like 1990. And I'm just trying to find, and I don't care what it is. I mean, I don't care what kind of job it is, as long as I can do it from home, work for myself and raise my daughter. They did not want to put her in the daycare system. Like I purposely waited till I was 30 to have kids so I could stay home and be a mom and not use daycare and, be the room mom and the Girl Scout mom and all that fun stuff like that. And so I know a lot of your listeners probably don't remember back to the 90s, but back then there was no internet to find things to do. We had to look in the classified section of the newspapers and and I'm looking for jobs, and I'm looking, and I can't find anything. And I happened to meet a couple of guys that were real estate investors. And they said, We buy houses and we fix them up and we sell them. So my mind was like, oh, they decorate houses. I love to decorate. I could do that. And that is how I started real estate investing. I started off as a rehabber, and I actually thought on my first house that I was going to decorate it and sell it. And if anyone's ever rehabbed, you all know that rehabbing and decorating are not the same thing. And even at all, tiny the same thing. So I was literally in for the ride of my life.
Did you skip over the tanning salons? There was a tanning salon.
Earlier in my life, I had thought, I want to work for myself, and in my later 20s, and I was working at a health club. So at that time, I was teaching aerobics. It was the 80s. So, I've got the big hair and, the socks and the big tennis shoes. I'm teaching aerobics. I'm a personal trainer for people, and people keep calling and asking if we have tanning beds. And I'm thinking, well, we're in Florida. Why would we have tanning beds? So I started doing the minuscule research that's available, because again, there's no, tap it on your phone and there it is. And I thought, what a good idea. People that work and live in Florida work, and they don't have time, and they want to be tan, and they don't always have time to go to the beach and lay out and do all this sort of stuff like that. So I teamed up with a few people that worked with me at the health club, and we decided to open up a tanning salon. And actually, the tanning salon did really well. It really did very, very well. And I called it Tan-fastic, like fantastic, but Tan-fastic. Sort of like my podcast is Dwanderful. So like instead of wonderful, it's Dwanderful. So I guess I've been sort of playing off my name for a million years. And the tanning was really fun in the beginning, but you don't always see the ugly side to the business. And people lay on those tanning beds and they sweat terrible. And after a while, I was like, oh my God, if I have to wipe out one more person's sweat, I am just going to lock those doors. I cannot be doing this. And so it was fun. It was a fun thing. And I ended up selling it to one of my customers. So it's like, nah, it's just not for me. I just don't like all the sweating and cleaning. And that's just not my thing. So I sold it. So I was good. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to get married and have this baby. It's going to be great.
So that was before the whole real estate.
Oh, yeah. That was before. And I really did. And the thing I loved about that is I did work for myself for a little while. And I was my own boss. But the thing is, with the tanning salon, it's open 9 to 9, 7 days a week. So when people don't come into work, I had to work, which happened a lot. And, someone's sick or something. And then next thing you know, I find myself working, 15 days in a row, 9 to 9, because I can't get reliable help. And, I'm cleaning up after people and wiping up sweat. I'm just like, ugh, this is not for me. So I had a girl that came in, she and her boyfriend, they came in like every single day. I'm like, would you all want to buy this business from me? And they did. So I was like, whoop, whoop. I'm out.
Learning experience. It seems like
working for myself.
It seems like you're not suitable for actually having a job. You're more suitable for being in control of your own business and your way of making money.
Yes, I am. And real estate, I got to tell you, I love real estate. And I look back at my first deal, and I really did, truly from my heart, I think it was just going to be like decorating. And I had carpet put in, I painted the walls, I had some, everyone still made custom made blinds back in those days. And I had some of that stuff done, and I was like, man, this house is a disaster. It needs so much work. So I actually started going to the Home Depot and taking those classes and learning how to do things. So I rehabbed my first house mostly myself. I did the tile, I did the bathrooms, I put in the toilets, the sinks. At night when Ayla would be asleep, I was screwing cabinets together. I learned how to make screens for the windows. I learned how to pressure wash, landscape, all of it. And I rehabbed that house, most of it all by myself. And I made $22,000 on my first deal. And I was like, well, where can you work for yourself? My daughter's with me. I'm having fun rehabbing, because I'm young, and it's like, oh, this is so much fun. And I made $22,000 and never looked back.
That's great. Well, I want to focus in on pre-foreclosures, short sales. Where we are in the market today It's October 2020. You've got coronavirus going on. A lot of people are delinquent on paying their mortgage, paying their rent. I don't know if you agree with my intro that for the past 10 to 12 years, it's been getting harder and harder to find pre-foreclosures, short sales, or not. But tell us about your perspective on that. Was it hard to find foreclosures, short sales, and how is it now in today's economic environment?
Well, that's a really good question, Brian. I mean, I have never felt like it was difficult to find deals. I think a lot of it is just the methods that you use. And I am still of the kind of the old school. Well, I am of the old school. Like whenever we're out looking for deals, we still go out and knock on doors and talk to people. And 99% of the people don't like to do that. And so they rely on mailers and postcards and yellow letters and finding people on the internet and text messaging and all those things like that. And I am more of like, hey, let's put out some bandit signs, which we put those bandit signs in the yards of vacant houses. So once a house becomes bank owned and it's just sitting there, it's probably going to sit there for 2 years anyway. We put signs in those yards. I have my students put bandit signs in the windows of pawn shops, bail bondsmen, places where you're going to find a lot of people that are already have the mindset to get rid of things. And so we've always had really good luck finding lots and lots of deals. And the thing is just structuring that deal. And I feel like for me, for short sales, even when the market, of course, we had that giant crash and, you could do short sales without even batting an eye. Then, the market got better and short sales got a little bit tougher to do. But I feel like when people approach them from the right perspective, which is from the bank's point of view, which is the actual financial loss to the bank, we really didn't miss a beat. We still get about 80% of our short sales done. Our students do as well. And we buy most of those houses at about 50% of the value.
Let's take them one at a time, and starting with short sales.
Okay.
First of all, just explain to our audience what that is in case someone's wondering.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I always figure everyone knows because I know it so well. And then I'll get done talking and people go, what is a short sale?
It can be confusing. So I want to make sure our audience understands exactly what a short sale is.
Thank you for that. Basically, a short sale is contacting the bank on behalf of the homeowner. So the homeowner owns the home. The homeowner is behind in payments. You contact the bank on behalf of the homeowner and you get the bank to accept less than what's owed against that property. So maybe you come across a homeowner who has a $200,000 house. They owe $200,000 and they're in foreclosure. Like the sale date is coming and they are definitely fixing to lose their house. So they owe what it's worth. So most investors will just walk away from those deals because they don't really know that they have another option. So what we would do is have the homeowner sign a sales contract, get the property tied up, and then I would contact the bank and say, hey, I'm working with these homeowners over here and they're losing their house. They owe basically what it's worth. I need you to accept a short sale so I can close the deal. So the short sale would be a $200,000 house with a $200,000 balance, and maybe I can buy it for $120,000. So I'm buying it short of the amount that's owed. So it's a short sale. So I find a $200,000 house, $200,000 balance, using all my super spy short sale techniques. I get the bank to take $120,000. Now I have a house for $120,000. So now I can rehab it. I can wholesale it to another investor for a quick turn. I might even live in it if I'm looking for a house for myself. I could buy it and keep it for a rental. I mean, you have endless possibilities when the numbers are good. So the whole purpose of doing a short sale is to get the bank to take less as a full payment. The $200,000 house, they take $120,000. That's the full payment. So I may give the homeowners $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 to move with, which puts me in the house at $125,000. And now I can rehab it, wholesale it, whatever I want to do with it. So for us, we wholesale.
Dwan, take us through that conversation with the bank, starting with who you actually contact at the bank, because I'm sure it can't. You don't just talk to the bank teller. You have to get in touch with someone specific. So take us through that conversation, please.
These are really good questions. Thank you. So short sales, the first thing is you contact the department at the bank that's called loss mitigation. Loss mitigation. So that is the department that handles the short sales. Now, typically at this point, once you meet that homeowner, they've already gotten, they get those nasty letters, Brian. They've got nasty letters, contact me, and there's usually a contact name already on that letter. So sometimes you can call that actual person and say, hey, I'm calling on behalf of homeowner loan number, ... It says to call you. We want to do a short sale. I need you to connect me with the loss mitigation department. Now, once they get into so that's their job, loss mitigation. They mitigate losses. It is their job to get properties off of the books. Whether they do it by taking it to the foreclosure or whether they do it by the short sale, the actual job description of loss mitigation is to get rid of this property off of the books one of two ways: short sale it or take it to foreclosure. So our job as a real estate investor really is to show the loss mitigation rep why it's a better deal to take my offer than to actually take the property through the entire foreclosure process. So basically, Brian, it's sort of like an attorney that's building a case. Like you're on trial for murder. You got this attorney, you want them to pull out all the stops to show that you're innocent instead of getting prosecuted. So I'm trying to show the bank, like, listen, my homeowners, give them a break over here. Don't punish them by taking them to foreclosure. Because the foreclosure is the ultimate punishment, because now they lose their house, they've got a foreclosure on their credit. I mean, it's just a big, ugly thing. And so by getting the bank to accept my offer, it gives the homeowners a reprieve. They don't get a foreclosure on the credit report. They get money to move with, and they get a chance to get a clean, fresh start.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. Why in today's strong housing market would a bank sell you on a short sale a property that's worth $200,000 for $120,000 when if they foreclosed, they could just go ahead and sell it for $200,000? It seems like they're leaving a lot of money on the table.
It does seem like that. That's why you got to do short sales my way. It does seem like that. And what I have found over the years, the banks really, if you look at any situation, the thing that the banks care about is the money. The banks care about the financial loss to the bank. And what most people don't understand is the CEO of Bank of America recently said when the bank serves foreclosure papers, like not just late notices, they say, okay, you're now officially in foreclosure. This is your notice of default, NOD, you may know that term. You are officially in foreclosure. The minute the bank serves foreclosure papers, the bank loses 40% of the value straight off the top. So you got $200,000 house, they lose 40% straight off the top. The best they're going to make at the end is $120,000. That's the best they're going to make when it's all said and done, because the bank has to pay a lot of attorney's fees. They have to put it's called forced insurance. Like we all have our homeowners insurance. If you stop making your mortgage payments, the bank has to put forced insurance onto the property that they have to pay for. The bank has to pay the real estate taxes. The bank has to pay 6% commission to the real estate agent that eventually gets the house and sells it for the bank. They have to pay that commission. The bank may have to do some repairs. If they don't do repairs, they have to lower the price. So maybe they have to lower the price to $175. So when you go to the bank and you talk about the numbers, the actual financial loss to the bank, it's not a stretch for the bank to take $120 from me, opposed to maybe getting $120 or $30 net after the foreclosure process. And what a lot of people don't know is the entire time that property is in foreclosure, it is a defaulted asset. So the bank now has, two columns. These are all of our property. Everybody's making their payments, and these are all the properties that people are not. This house goes from this column over here, and now that house is on every quarterly report. So if the process takes a year, that single house, just that one house, it's on 4 quarterly reports. It's on the year-end report. The more bad loans that the bank has, the more the bank is sort of punished, because this big bank borrows money from here, and they have to pay more if they have too many bad loans. So in a case like right now with Corona, millions and millions of people are not making mortgage payments, like millions are not making mortgage payments. And yes, the bank gave people a reprieve, but they're now asking all these people to make back all the back payments at the same time. Now, people cannot do that. Some of the banks are taking the payments and putting them on the back of the loan, which is ideally for the homeowner, lets them start making their payments. Other banks are doing something that's called a forbearance agreement. That's where they take all the back payments and divide them equally, maybe over 12 months, and add them to the old payment. So maybe the payment was $1,000, and now you divide all your late payments, and that comes to $250 a month. So now your payment's $1,250, which is more, which most people can't do. And the longer a house sits there and the longer the payments go, the more money that the bank loses. And also too, Brian, what a lot of investors don't know is if the homeowner would happen to file bankruptcy, they could actually live in the house free for 2 years. So if the homeowner files bankruptcy, when it's all said and done, the bank will only make about 75 or 80% of the actual value of the house after all the fees. So I think the thing that people miss is they just call the bank and go, do you do short sales? And the loss mitigation rep says, no. And they go, okay. And they hang up because you're not talking in the bank's language. They want to hear numbers. When I can say, hey, let me just show you how much money you're going to lose. Will you just look at these numbers with me? And they do. All of a sudden they're like, oh, holy cow, let me run this by my boss. So technically, my offer is better because it gets the property off the books immediately. It doesn't carry on all these quarters. It doesn't carry over to the year. The bank stops the bleeding. And it's a better deal for them. So
let's talk about some of the other objections, both objections you might get from the homeowner themselves about going through this process with you, and then other objections you typically encounter from the bank side as well.
Well, a homeowner, honestly, they know that they owe what their house is worth. A lot of homeowners have already called a real estate agent. They're just like, listen, you owe too much. I can't even list it for you. Many people have already tried to refinance their house, and they can't refinance it because, again, they've missed 2 or 3 or 4 payments, and their credit's too bad, and they don't have any equity. I mean, you can't refinance a $200,000 house when you owe $200,000 if you've missed 4 mortgage payments, because your credit's too low now. So the homeowners have mostly gone through that. So when I sit down and say, hey, listen, I can call the bank and I can try to do a short sale. And here's the gist of it. You owe this much. I'm going to get the bank to take that much. Now, I am not going to get a $200,000 house and get the bank to take $120,000. I'm not making $80,000. I'm going to sell it to Brian, who's going to rehab it, and I might sell to him for $140,000. So I get a deal worked out with the homeowners to accept whatever amount it is, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I explain to them I'm going to sell it to somebody else, or maybe even rehab it if I'm going to rehab it. So everybody's clear going in, and the homeowner is always like, well, what's the worst thing? I said, well, the worst thing is the bank says no, and you're exactly where you are today. They say no, 60 days go by, you're still in foreclosure. There's nothing I can do. So there's really no downside for the homeowner. If I can't get it, they're already losing their house anyway. And I would suggest, like, hey, if you really need time, you're not ready to move, you can't afford to move, you can always file bankruptcy and buy yourself a little bit more time if you need to go down that path. So I offer them all the advice that I've got. Now, the bank side, right off the bat, they're just like, will you do a short sale? No. And I'm like, okay. So with the banks, I have learned, I am a master negotiator. So I have learned that it's not about just making an offer to the bank. It's about lining up a negotiation. So in negotiating, I make an offer and the bank counters. And I maybe raise my offer and they come down and then we kind of meet in the middle. So what I have developed over the years is actually a 3-step short sale system. So my first offer is very, very low. $200,000 house, I'm going to offer the bank like $80,000. But I'm going to talk about the homeowner. They're in trouble, COVID, they lost their job, somebody died, someone got sick, they're getting divorced. Here's their situation. It's really tragic. I need you to help me. And the bank is like, they don't really care about the homeowners. But it allows me to get a really low ball offer in. And the bank will counter. I'll say, oh, listen. The second offer, I talk about all the negative things in the area. Did you know there's boarded up houses? Did you know there's new construction? Did you know that there's a lot of crime? Here's some police reports. There's pedophiles living in that area. I send in a bunch of negative stuff to make the bank question if they can sell the house as quickly as they think that they can. But then that gives me a chance to raise my offer and then to come down a little bit. And then my third offer is the one I hit them with because it's the one that they really care about. It's like, do you know how much money you're going to lose? Have you actually crunched the numbers? And I know they have not, because the person that works in loss mitigation never crunches numbers. Their job is simply to listen to you, take your offers, and take them to the asset manager, which is their boss. So those rooms, people work in like a big room that has all the little cubby holes, and maybe 80 people work there, and then there's like a boss's office over here. That person is called the asset manager. That is my decision-making person. My loss mitigation is sort of a gatekeeper to the person who I really need. And so once I go over, I said, well, you need to, take the numbers, take this and show it to your boss over there. And let's just see how your boss feels when they see you turn down my offer, which is actually more than you're going to make in the end. So just show it to your boss and let's, see what your boss says about that. And then when I get them to show my offer to the asset manager, surprisingly, they take a lot of the deals because they do crunch the numbers and they do see the loss to the bank and they do see the quarterly reports and the year-end reports, and that's their job. So that is the person that is actually the decision maker for me.
How often when you go down this road with the bank, do you get to an agreement with them?
Honestly, about 80% of the time.
When you don't, why is that?
Some of the banks are just like, no, we'd rather just take it to the steps and just take it to the courthouse sale. They'd just rather take it, or they're not willing to come down low enough. Or something that happens quite a bit is the homeowners call you literally 2 weeks before the sale date, and they want to try to work something out, and there's just not enough time. So, I'm sure if you've been in the foreclosure business for any length of time, you've had people call you 48 hours before the foreclosure sale. And that happens a lot. And my first question always, as I say, well, how long have you been in foreclosure? Oh, it's like 12 months. I was in and out. And I'm like, why are you waiting until 48 hours before the sale to contact me? Like, where have you been all this time? That now it's Monday and your sale date's on Wednesday. And people always say the same thing. They go, well, I didn't actually think the bank would take my house. They really don't believe the bank's going to take their house. And now it's late and now they need help. So I always call the bank anyway. And sometimes I'm like, hey, listen, can you just postpone the sale for 30 days? Let's try to work out a short sale. And they'll say no, house goes to sale. or the bank is just like, no, we're just going to take it back. We just want clean records. We don't care, But in most cases, the bank will entertain a short sale. That's why every single bank in America has an actual loss mitigation department, because they have to mitigate and get rid of all these losses. So there's no big bank. Now, and also it could be a small local bank. A lot of little small local banks won't do them. But any of the major banks, like the Wells Fargo's, US banks, any major bank, 100% of them all do short sales.
And if you're talking to a Wells Fargo or Bank of America, are you talking to someone in the local branch or on the national level? Like, how do you even know who to get a hold of?
No, when you contact loss mitigation is typically, at this point, it's a servicing company. When you buy your house, you're like, oh, I bought my house in Wells Fargo, and you make a couple payments, and then a couple months later, you get a letter. Hey, no longer make your payments to Wells Fargo. You're going to make your payments to ABC Servicing Company. And that's where you make your payment to. Because the servicing company handles the payments and things for all of the banks. So 9 out of 10 times, the loan has been sent to a servicing company. But once it gets into foreclosure, it now gets sent to a loss mitigation department, typically back at Wells Fargo. But the loss mitigation departments are usually in like Utah, Texas, California. There's like 3 large loss mitigation centers for the entire United States. So most of the time, you're talking to somebody. Maybe I'm in Florida right now, so I might be talking to somebody in Utah or Arizona or Texas, but it's a big, giant division with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employees that are just going through foreclosures. And they also have, a lot of people don't know this either, they also have a giant industry within the bank that handles all the bankruptcies. When a homeowner files bankruptcy, that file leaves this department and goes over here to this bankruptcy department, and they have as big of a bankruptcy department as they do loss mitigation department. And then they handle the things, and then they are the people that are able to approve the short sale or not. And another thing, once we do one short sale with the bank, so maybe you do your first one with Wells Fargo, and it's the loss mitigation department of Wells Fargo, in Utah, for example. And you come across another homeowner that also originally bought their house from Wells Fargo, you can contact that very same loss mitigation person that you worked with before. Say, hey, this is Dwan. Remember we did that deal? It was really good. It was so smooth. I've got another deal. It was an original Wells Fargo. Can you find that file and bring it over to your stack of files, and can we work together again? And once you do a second deal with the same person, it's so easy after that. You can just call that same person over and over and over again, and they already know you're going to send all these offers. They already know all the things you're going to do, and then it's just like, okay, just give me your bottom line. Let me take it to my asset manager, and I'll get back to you. So
you have those relationships now at this point, I'd imagine.
Yeah, we actually have. I have some people now. I just text them, like, hang on, I'll be like, okay, here's the loan number, da da da. Here's my offer. Get back to me. I just text them, and in like 2 days, they'll call back and say, hey, we can take this much. I don't even have to make an offer. And the thing is, it doesn't take a lot for people to develop that relationship with somebody. If you just do 1 or 2 deals at the same bank and you close on those deals so that loss mitigation rep looks good in the eyes of their boss, they'll bend over backwards for you, because most of them get paid bonuses for every deal that they close. Every short sale they do, they get paid. I mean, sometimes $500 bonus. They get paid big bonuses for getting the deals closed. So when they know Dwan's calling, she closes 100% of the time, I'm going to get a bonus, they're inclined to want to work with me.
So I want to switch over to pre-foreclosures and foreclosures, which I'm sure is a very similar process, but I'm sure there's differences as well. Can you just start off by explaining to our audience what those differences are, and how you approach pre-foreclosures and foreclosures? I'm
going to give everybody a lingo lesson right here. I talk to people all the time, and they go, oh, this house is a pre-foreclosure. And I'm like, well, tell me what that means. Oh, they're a month away from their sale date. And so I think a lot of the HGTV has changed. Like people use the term fix and flip, and that's not actually what that is. Flipping, wholesaling, is getting a house or a contract and flipping it to somebody else and never touching it. It's not fixing it up. That's called rehabbing. So people, a pre-foreclosure, technically a pre-foreclosure, is when a homeowner is in the stages of being behind on their payments. They've missed one or two payments. Maybe they've tried to catch up a few payments, but they've been missing payments, so they are in pre-foreclosure. Once the bank serves them the notice, this is your official notification that we are now foreclosing on your property, that is a person that is in foreclosure. So they are in pre-foreclosure when their payments are late, and when the bank finally says, okay, this is the official document, you're in foreclosure, and it gets filed at the public courthouse, and it's public record, that's when they're in foreclosure. The day of that sheriff's sale or that foreclosure sale, that day where the bank takes the house, it's not a foreclosure anymore. Now it's a bank owned. It's REO, it's real estate owned. The day of that foreclosure sale, that house is no longer foreclosure, it is now owned by the bank. So when someone is in foreclosure, they're in the time period of when the bank served papers and the day that their sale date is. And based on the state you're in, it's called a sheriff's sale, a trustee's sale. Sometimes it's just called a foreclosure sale. I typically just use the word foreclosure sale because everybody understands what that means. Because if you say, oh, it's a trustee sale to a person that is in a different type of estate, they don't even know what you're talking about. And some people still call it, they sell your house on the courthouse steps. They sell it at the steps. A lot of states still do that. They have actual live weekly auctions and sell them right there in the courthouse. In Texas, they do that.
So, Dwan, when you're negotiating a short sale with the bank, is the property typically in some sort of pre-foreclosure period?
Typically the payments are behind. People are behind, and the thing is with foreclosure, there's just so many misconceptions out there. A lot of homeowners, they'll miss 8 or 9 or 10 payments before the bank will actually file that foreclosure notice. It's called a lis pendens or a notice of default. So the bank really goes a long time before they file the notice of default, because the second they file that paper, they lose 40% of the value right off the top, because now it's attorneys, fees, court, foreclosure sale, getting the house back, getting it listed. It has to be winterized. It's got to be maintained. They got to pay real estate commission. The day they serve those papers, they know they're taking a big hit. So I work with homeowners anywhere. I don't care when they call me. They can call me 3 days before the sale. I'll still work with them. It does not make any difference to me. And it's not really easier one way or the other. If they're 8 payments behind, but the bank still didn't file the papers yet, it doesn't make it any easier when the bank files the papers. So so as far as the short sale aspect of it, they could be 3 payments behind or 10 payments behind or 15 payments behind. It does not make it any easier or harder to do a short sale. The other thing that makes it hard, now I have had many homeowners that have called me from my advertising, and they said, listen, I'm not going to be able to make my next payment. I used up all my savings. I used up all my retirement. We've been doing everything to try to save this house. I cannot make my next payment. So they're not behind yet. In a case like that, it's a lot harder to get the bank to want to play ball, because well, their payments are on time. And I'm like, yeah, I understand, but they used up all their savings. They used up their retirement. They borrowed money. There's no more money coming. They can't afford to move now because they used all the money they had. So when they do fall behind, they already said, screw it, their credit's going to be a wreck anyway. They're going to file bankruptcy too. And you can sometimes get the bank to work with you if they haven't missed any payments. If you have a proof that they've used like every dollar they ever had to try to keep the house, which people do. which is sad. So I'm like, listen, once you don't ever, if you try, if you have to use up all your savings or your emergency money or whatever, but I tell homeowners all the time, please don't spend your retirement trying to save this house, because that's your money for your retirement. When you get to that point, you're going to wish you had that money more than you're going to wish you had this house today. So please, for the love of God, don't be dipping into your money to try to save that house, because typically you use up all your retirement and you lose your house anyway. And it happens all the time. I can't tell you how many times I'm just like, oh, please, please, please stop the bleeding. I promise you, once you walk away from this house and you separate yourself from it, in a few months' time, you'll be like, whew, I'm so happy this is behind me.
Yeah, I think people get caught up in their pride and their ego, and they don't want to admit they're in the kind of trouble they're in, and they'll do anything to keep that house.
They had, we had one couple, and this was, they're all sad, but this person is my neighbor, in Colorado. So I'm in Florida right now. I'm at my Florida house, and we're blessed to have a second home in Colorado, which is mainly where we're based, is in Colorado. And Steve and Mary lived right across the street from me. We knew them for a million years. And they called up and said, hey, listen, we're behind on our payment, our house. The husband was in construction. So right away, we're like, listen, let us help you out. We can try and do a short sale, whatever. No, we're going to keep this house. We're going to keep this house. Well, they had a handicapped son who was severely handicapped. And he was like 26 years old at this point. And, and like cerebral bad, just, you have to like feed him diapers, like the whole thing. And they just would not part with that house. And they ended up using all of their savings. They used every single solitary dime of both of their retirements, all the way down to where they had nothing left. And they ended up moving into apartments and having to go on government Section 8 to be able to live. And I bugged them like nobody. I was like, listen, please, please, please don't use your retirement. No, we have to stay. This is our house. Our son loves this house. We can't move him. And they just would not let go of this house, and ended up leaving with zero, and ended up having to file bankruptcy and living on government housing. It's like, oh, people. So even people that I knew these people for years. I couldn't talk them out of it.
Yeah, that's such a shame.
Yeah, it was so heartbreaking for me.
Help me understand this. Once the property is in foreclosure, the judge has signed off on foreclosure. You've got this period before the sheriff's sale. Uh-huh. How do you approach it then? Like, are you still dealing with the bank, or are you waiting for the sheriff's sale? what's your strategy when a property is in foreclosure?
That is such a good question too. Because a lot of people don't misunderstand that. Until the day of that foreclosure sale, up till that very day, the homeowner still owns the house. So they are living in the house. They're in the foreclosure process. The bank served papers. We're taking your house on January 20th, and it's October 1st. So from October 1st to January 20th, they've got paperwork that says we're taking your house. It's public record at the courthouse. It's been published through one of the processes that the court system has to do, is publish it some ways where they publish legal notices. So everybody knows at this point, but it's still their home. They're still living in it until the very day of that sale. Those people still own that house. So even up until the morning of that foreclosure sale, they could go down that morning and they could file bankruptcy and stop the sale and keep living in the house. So they don't lose any of their rights. But once the foreclosure sale comes, and maybe in your state, the sheriff's sale is Tuesdays at 10 o'clock. At 10:01, gone. It's possession of the bank. You got 48 hours to move out. They change the locks, and you're out. And that's the end of it. So the people own the house all the way till the very last second. And most people think, and even homeowners, I have come across hundreds and hundreds of people that the minute they got served the foreclosure papers, they mistakenly thought that the bank owned the house and they'd move out. I've come across hundreds of people that the second they got served papers, they moved out because they thought the bank owned their home. So I've even had homeowners that I've been able to find them, like, no, it didn't. I looked at their papers. I'm like, well, you don't have the sale date for another 90 days. They've moved back in because it's still their house, But now once it goes to the sale date, once that foreclosure sale comes, then there's no short sale. There's no nothing. The bank has it. They now have to go through the red tape and process the property and turn it into the insurance and collect whatever losses there are. And then it's got to sit for a while, and they've got to get their local real estate agent then to list the house, put it into the MLS. And then you'll see things in the MLS like, oh, this was a foreclosure, short sales accepted, and you'll see all these things in the MLS. And that's because the bank now owns it, and they're going to do anything they can do to get rid of it.
Where do you work in during that period?
Well, once it's gone and it's done and it's foreclosed and the bank owns it, we don't buy those, because anything that comes up into the MLS, the second it hits the MLS, every investor in town sees it. So I personally don't feel like there's any good deals there. So and not strictly, because we buy things at auctions. I love to buy houses from auctions. Oh my gosh, there's nothing more exciting than an auction. But we prefer to work with homeowners directly before they lose their house. Because I feel like, for me personally, having been that broke single mom, I lost my car and my house and my husband, and I had my baby, which was the most important thing. And when I was going through all of that, nobody knocked on my door. Nobody mailed me a postcard. Nobody tried to help me in any way possible. So I know what that feels like for these homeowners, because I went through it, and it's embarrassing and it's devastating. And talk about feeling like a loser, and like every decision in your life has been terrible. Like, I get that so much. So for me personally, I would rather do my advertising to deal with people that are somewhere between the late payment and the sale date. I would rather work with homeowners directly. It's personally more rewarding for me. I know a lot of investors that want nothing to do with homeowners, and they wait till the house gets put into the MLS, and the date comes up on the MLS, everyone starts bidding on it, but then everybody in town knows about that same deal, and now you're just sort of fighting with everybody else to see who's going to get the deal. So my personal preference is, and I like to share that with my students too, it's like, listen, you make way more of an impact if you help homeowners in trouble, because they at least get a fresh start, and they get a fresh life, and they get some money. You can keep them from getting a foreclosure on their credit report, and you can make a lot of money for yourself. So my business motto actually is people before profits. My whole entire business motto is people before profits. So I would rather try to work with the people and help them out, and not let the bank make any profit.
How do you find these people? Do they find you through direct marketing, or do you subscribe to some sort of list that gives you insight into who you might be able to contact?
No, I actually, we still, those bandit signs, those I buy houses cash signs, the number one way that we get our phone to ring is we go put those signs. And this is where I actually do, and still today, I do driving for dollars. My husband and I will go and drive through some neighborhoods. Any place that we see a vacant house, we put an I buy houses, cash for your house sign in the yard of the vacant houses. Because I know once it's vacant and boarded up, I know the bank owns it. But I also know that based on how far behind the banks are, once the house belongs to the bank at that foreclosure sale, the bank lets houses sit vacant for an average of 2 years. Now with COVID, I've already researched it. The banks are going to be letting some of those houses sit vacant for 5 years. So during that time period, that house is sitting vacant, you can't do anything with it. The bank doesn't have a single file for it. It's not listed with the real estate agent. It's just sitting in limbo, and you can't buy those houses. There's no way, there's no list, there's no magic number to buy those houses. They are in the red tape of the bank until the house is fully processed, which means the paperwork, like I said, the insurance, the whatever, the taxes, and then they go, okay, now we're going to list it. Between the foreclosure sale and the day they list it is approximately 2 years. And I'm sure everyone on this podcast knows you've driven by houses and you're like, man, that house has been sitting there vacant forever. When are they going to do something with that house? The house has been sitting there for 2 years. It's an eyesore. The kids are there. Vandalism. Why is that house still sitting vacant? It's because the banks don't have the staffing, the manpower to process those houses. So I figure that's like free advertising for me. So every time I see a vacant house, I put my bandit signs that say I buy houses cash. I put my signs in every single yard within miles of where I want to buy houses. So as people are driving to and fro, they see the sign and they go, I need to sell my house. I'm in trouble. There's a house, a sign in front of that vacant house. I'm going to call those people because it appears like I snatched up all the vacant houses in the area. And really all I did was just put out a bunch of signs.
Are you anticipating more opportunities in the short sale and pre-foreclosure?
Yes, yes. The short answer. But the thing is, a lot of this bailout money and when people were given the reprieve off of their mortgage payments, the only people that qualified for that are people who were current on their mortgage as of March 1st. So anyone that didn't make their payment on March 1st, they didn't qualify for that reprieve of mortgage payments. A lot of that money that the banks are giving out is based on credit. Now, in the regular ebbs and flows of life, there are always people in foreclosure, getting job transfer. Someone's dying, someone's being born, someone's getting married, someone's getting divorced. So the foreclosure business itself is always there. And anyone that was already there didn't qualify for any of that stuff. So those people are so much worse off right now because they didn't get a break on the mortgages. Their payments are falling further and further behind every single solitary day. And maybe they're not back working yet, and they have absolutely no possibility of how to catch up. So those people that were already in the snowball of missing payments are way worse off right now than they were back in March. They're so much worse off in October. Now, the people that qualified and, hey, I didn't have to make payments, April, May, and June, July, August, September, hey. Well, now those banks are winning all the money now, and people are like, I don't have 6 payments. And not all the banks are just letting them put those payments on the back of the loan and make the next payment. They're trying to work out payment plans with people, and people still aren't working. So we have the regular foreclosures, and now we have the millions of additional people that are somewhere, there are somewhere in the process at this point because they don't have the opportunity to catch back up. So we're going to have like double foreclosures for a while.
Now, Dwan, I know you teach students how to work these types of opportunities. Can you fill us in a little bit about your training and your coaching, and then also how people might be able to get a hold of you?
So my website is dwanderful.com. So just Dwan Derful. So DWANDERFUL, dwanderful.com. I also have a podcast. It's a very high-rated top podcast. It's called the most Dwanderful Real Estate Podcast Ever, and it's just nothing but fun. And actually, Brian, if people just go to my website and just opt in, dwanderful.com, you just give me your name and your email and your cell phone number. I send people several things. I'll send them a free, a 200-page real estate program, the top 7 real estate investing strategies for today's new market, and I'll send them 4 ebooks. One is a book I wrote with Steve Forbes. One is a book my husband wrote with Dan Kennedy, and one is a short sale ebook and a wholesaling ebook. So they get 5 really super cool things if they want to go opt in over there.
Great. And as we wrap it up, Dwan, any words of advice, wisdom for investors out there who are looking for, maybe they were like you and, in dire straits, a tough situation and looking to get out of that. Any words of advice or encouragement for them?
I do. I always just want to tell people, like, no matter what you think or how afraid or whatever fear is holding you back, just take that first step. Now, I took mine, like you just said, I was in dire straits and it worked out for me. You may not be in dire straits, but you really want to do this because you're looking ahead and you're like, I don't really like where things are going. Don't wait until you're in an emergency situation. Do it right now. But if you start investing right now today, just think next October, when you look back to this day, how will your life be different? So if you can just project 1 year ahead of what being a real estate investor would do for you, you'll look back and go, dang, I should have done it back then. Brian was on there, Dwan was on there. I still just kept watching podcasts. I didn't do anything. So take the first step. Honestly, fear is not your enemy. It doesn't even really exist. It's only in your head.
Dwan, I really appreciate you taking us into a deep dive on the short sale process, the pre-foreclosure and foreclosure process. It's been a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on. Bye, everybody.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.